Okay, here we are back in the garage for another one-take Bajas on a budget video edition. Today what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to build a smoother diff. Some of you guys put them together, you find out that they're crunchy. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a version of how we've been building diffs. They run a little bit smoother and they last a little bit longer. One of the important things is on these diffs, so some of the parts inside of them are stamped, so they're going to need to be directional. So on this washer right here, I'm going to show you, you can see this is the side that the stamp hits. Can we get a close up on that? Get it on in there. My pretty fingernails. Alright, and that's the stamp side. The stamp actually comes down and pops it out that way, so all the edges are rounded. And if you notice on the other side, all the edges are sharp. Okay? We run all those sharp edges up against the gear that sits inside here for smoother running. But first, what you want to do with those stamped edges is, zoom back out, is you want to sand this. We have a piece of paper on a board here, so you're just going to put it on there and you're going to go in figure 8 motions. Lap it around, spin it, lap it around, spin it, lap it around. Okay, and what that's going to do is that's going to get all those sharp stamped edges off the back side. You probably notice a little bit of a grooving in here. This inside washer here is anywhere from 1 to 2 years old. I've had 2 Bajas in my possession for a pretty long period of time. One was one of the original SS kits, and the other one was another kit that I got after the first one wore out, but I kept all the diffs and shocks and everything, parted it out. So this is the first piece that you're going to want to notice that on the stamp side. The second piece that I want to show you that goes on the stamp side is the metal piece that's going to hold your spider gears inside of your diff. This is also another directional piece. As you notice, this is the flat side up and this is the rounded side up. I like to run the flat side so it fits in the plastic nice and snug, and that way when you run your spider gears, the sharper edge is on the back side and the spider gear runs up against a nice flat corner rather than running up against the rounded edges. Also, I think the rounded edges up against the casting of the aluminum housing works a little bit better on that. So another thing I want to show you on this is how I insert my O-rings. A lot of times we've told guys, you know, lube up your O-rings. Since way back when, Associated has a green slime. It's an O-ring conditioner. It's like $3 I think in the hobby stores or something like that. I use this on all my O-rings. It's an O-ring conditioner. It's not a grease. So what I do is I put my bearing on the shaft. If we can get a close-up of this, I put a little bit of green slime on the shaft, and then after I put the O-ring onto the green slime, I'll put some more O-ring on my finger and I'll pack it down in there. So it almost looks like I've done a nice bead of caulking around there, but it's just green slime. That way, if this part is if the O-ring's on the shaft now rather than it being in the housing, if your drives are already used, most likely where the pin goes through here might have a sharp edge on it. So I like to put the O-ring past that before I put it into the aluminum housing. Otherwise you might have a chance of cutting the O-ring. So, and each time I rebuild diffs, I use new O-rings. I use new O-rings. They're very inexpensive and they'll seal your diff, and it's a great way. If you're going to take the time to take this messy thing out, you might as well just go ahead and put new O-rings in. I mean, you get a bag of them for next to nothing, and it saves. If your dip dries out and you keep running it, you're just going to ruin it. There's a reason for the lube to be in there, so keep it in there. So anyways, we have our aluminum housing here. You're going to have 2 bearings on here, your outer, and this is pretty much your basic build. So I'm just going to show you how I build mine. I have half of it built here, so there's no rocket science to this. Just go ahead and put it together. you know, as the instructions say in the manual. I learned how to read when the Baja came out. Before that, I didn't know how to read, so it's been beneficial for me to get into this hobby. So anyways, you got your diff housing, you put your bearing on there, go ahead and drop your outdrive in there. You have your inner bearing in here. Some guys run bushings on there, and some guys run the O-rings all the way around. I've ran it either way, and it works both ways. Mrfixit claims that it runs smoother with the brass bushings. He runs brass bushings, and I run bearings. It's just what I do. I also like to drop a little bit of lube in here to take up the air, so I sprinkle it down below this washer, so that way I don't have any air into the washer. I have a little bit of lube in there. Remember, you're going to go with the flat side up. We want that flat side to run against the first spider gear in there. And go ahead and slip your pin through the edge, and that's going to go right on in there. And then I need a pair of needle nose. Can you get me some, Dave? I didn't have any up here, man. Thanks. So you're just going to needle nose this pin on in here, and then or you can use an Allen wrench. I noticed this one's a little bit tight. Maybe I didn't back out the set screw. Another thing I like to do before tightening that screw is I drop my gear in there. That way I know that my pin is lined up and it's going to be in the middle. It's not going to bind anywhere. And then I just slip a wrench in here, and we're going to tighten that little bad boy up. You can Loctite these in here if you'd like. The directions tell you to. If you like to follow direction, go ahead and do it. So I just tighten mine in there like so, and then smack that gear out of there. Then you also have your little bleeder screw on the side, and it's an access screw for that drive. You might want to make sure you use new O-rings in there too. That's another piece that I like to you know, Loctite up sometimes, but after you Loctite a few times, you're going to get, you know, your grease in there. So now I've got that in there. I like to put a little bit more lube in here. That way I don't have any air bubbles under my first spider gear. And that's going to go ahead and be the building of that half. So I already built this half. Another thing I like to do on this is I like to put all my goodies in here before I add lube. I do have a little bit of lube in here, but not much, and so I like to add it just to keep all the air out of the bottom. That way I know that I'm getting as much air or as much lube in there as possible. Some people say you need a little bit of room inside of there. I just fill them up and go, man, and I like to keep all my lube in there. So you're gonna get all these spider gears in here, and I lost my pin on that one. So we're going to pull that little bad boy back out and get my pin going in here. I love Diff lube, gets everywhere. And yes, I did clean all this up before I put the white shirt on. So we're at what, 8.5 minutes? Whew, we better start hauling ass. Okay, so we got all of our gears in there. You're going to fill this up the rest of the way. And another new O-ring that I like to use is going to be the O-ring on the housing. So I just top that off like so. Put my O-ring on top, and then you're going to put the two together. So we'll leave that up to you. Thanks. This is Shreadhead signing out. We'll see you at the races.